One of the things we did last year, and it was received very well according to the feedback that we got, and that was that rather than stand up here and give a speech, and there's a lot of things to give a speech about, instead we took in questions from the members. We publicized it Sunday night, it's been on the app, and we took in all the questions, we filtered them a little bit. We didn't avoid the tough ones, but we tried to get questions that were of interest to the general membership instead of specific, local specific or individual specific questions. And so we came up with a list of 10, and I'm going to attempt to answer those. This is not rehearsed. I might stumble on an answer or two, but bear with me. Let's go with question number 1, please. Is Canadian Pacific looking to take over one of the Western railroads? And I'll give you a little bit of a background on that. What happened, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, there's a guy named Hunter Harrison, and he's one of the modern robber baron guys that would have been at home in the 1860s when the railroad robber barons were stealing all of America's money and property and all of that. He came in and he tried to take over CSX. He's currently a small part of the rail operation in the United States, the CP, and he owns the railroads up north. And so he came in, and I think 1/3 the size of CSX, if not less, and he attempted to do a hostile takeover with CSX, and he beat on them for a while, and finally he backed away. And everything was quiet. CSX beat him off. And the next thing you know, a couple of months later, here he is, he's trying to buy Norfolk Southern, another railroad that's at least 3 to 4 times the size of his railroad. And the interesting thing about this is that he's not trying to buy a railroad because he's Warren Buffett and wants to invest in the future of America. He's trying to buy the railroads so that he can harvest all of the profits. He's made statements about how Norfolk Southern, for example, was overly maintained. They didn't need to spend nearly that amount of money. He put a freeze on locomotive purchases for the railroad that he currently owns because he believes they can last 3 years without any new locomotives. And so what he's doing is he's harvesting for the stockholders. It's a typical bottom line driven effort to take the money out of the company and give it to the investors that invest in these companies so that they can reap a profit at the expense of the company. There's no long-range planning, no long-term planning. Well, the Norfolk Southern effort, he was starting to get a little bit of traction, and everyone galvanized. We partnered up with the other labor organizations. The other railroads want no part of him. He's a pariah in the industry. And so there was a big effort on the part of everybody connected to the rail industry to work against his effort to take over Norfolk Southern. And what came about as a result of that was a high level of attention, increased level of awareness on the part of the government agencies, and the Department of Justice stepped in and gave an opinion that pretty much took him out of the picture. And that was because he wanted to establish a voting trust that flew in the face of certain regulations. Details don't matter, but he was successfully beaten back there. So now that's the 2 major railroads in the east, and the scuttlebutt is that, well, now he's going to go after the other railroads. We don't believe that's the case. Warren Buffett's not going to have anything to do with that, and there's a fairly strong, entrenched ownership group with Union Pacific. So at this time, we don't see that Hunter Harrison is going to be a threat to the Western railroads. So that's a long answer with a short question, but really I believe that we're more likely to see that kind of a hostile takeover effect come into play again in some different fashion back in the east. And this is important. This is not just about the ownership of the railroads, but what happens when they do that is they shortline, they harvest, they weaken the railroads, they do everything they can to reduce the cost of employment, they furlough employees, and they basically run the business into the ground. And we've already been there. Those of us who have been working in this industry for some time, we've already seen the outcome of what happens with that. We've all either touched or been a part of a failing railroad. I came up on Southern Pacific Railroad and watched what they did, and finally they were salvaged by Union Pacific, who went through its own trials and tribulations with the mergers and acquisitions that they did. So it's not good for our members when this happens. And the more and more that these people are driven by Wall Street analysts, when business decisions are made because someone on Wall Street wrote an article, generally speaking, it's not good for our members, the workforce of America. So we're going to continue to be vigilant and do everything we can, and we will keep an eye on this, and we will stay as a part of the effort to make sure that our nation's railroads remain strong and viable and good places to work. 'Cause, 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 Question number 2, why did we change from Anthem to Southern benefits for our short-term disability plan? Well, this is a question, I'm only one of 3 trustees. Your other trustees are General President Joe Sellers and GS&T Rich McLeese. Together, we looked at the history of our short-term disability program. It's been in place for a number of years now. And what we discovered after we got into a deep dive there and started looking at all the details is that Anthem had successfully profited to the tunes of millions of dollars into their pocket over and above the benefits that they paid out. They weren't doing anything wrong, but it was just a very profitable program. And so given that history, a decision was made by the trustees to go ahead and do what we call self-insuring. And that is that rather than give our money to Anthem and let them pay the benefits and keep the remainder, we're going to take the money, put it in-house. It's an ERISA plan. It's all the accounting is the same. We're not harvesting any money for the unions. It's all part of the package. But those millions of dollars that used to go to Anthem as profit will now be returned to our members in some fashion, whether it be increased benefit, reduced premium, reserve fund that covers ups and downs in the economy, whatever it is, it's going to be to the benefit of the members. So it was a very good move, and I applaud Joe and Rich for having the foresight to dive in and help get to the right place on that. So it's a very good move. We're very pleased with Southern benefits, and I think that we'll find from a membership standpoint that they're better service now than they were under Anthem. I'd like to give Joe and Rich a hand on that. Well, now this is a good question. Might be one that we really don't have a strong answer to, but I'll give you the answer that I think we know. And that is, first of all, the question is the FRA going to support 2-person crews? What we see is that the FRA has already supported 2-person crews in that they've proposed a rule that, for the most part, requires 2-person crews on every train in the country. There are exceptions. We don't like the exceptions. We are striving for a comprehensive 2-person crew rule that will mandate 2 people on every train in the country. That's our objective. We do appreciate FRA's efforts. We've been public with that. We've put out press releases that said that we appreciate both the Department of Transportation, Secretary Anthony Fox, and Administrator Sarah Feinberg, and a number of others. We appreciate their efforts, but we have to respectfully disagree that the proposed rule is the rule that we want. And so we have filed comments. We've joined with the other organizations. We filed comments, and we are going to have a hearing. I believe it's July 15th, John? And we will testify at that hearing, and we will do everything we can to reduce the number of exceptions and strengthen the rule so that it does get as close as possible to providing a 2-person crew on every train in the country. Question number 4, when will there be an application provided for retirees to be able to stay connected to our organization through UTU PAC or the Alumni Association? This is what I referred to earlier about Ken Menges, and Jason Doring, I think, had a part in this. And we were doing a little brainstorming the other day, and Ken came up with a really good idea. We already do a little piece of it, but not to the degree that I think that we can do. We can do better. And that is that when someone hires out on a railroad or a bus company, they become a member, we send them a new member packet. And it has a lot of information based on what craft they're in and what their general committee is, that kind of a thing. Well, Ken and Jason came up with a suggestion. What if we send a retiree packet? When we get notification that someone retires, let's send them a packet. Let's give them all of the information about the auxiliary, the Alumni Association, ways to stay contributing to PAC, that type of thing. So I think it's a great idea. I approved it immediately, and we're going to put it together, and you will see retiree packets started up here sometime in the near future. Now, I expected we'd see this one. This is actually an A and a B, 2 parts, but it's a single question. What's going on with national negotiations on the rail industry? I think I stood before you last year if you were at one of the meetings, and I told you not much. I can say that it's been a year and not much has happened. The deal is that the railroads, I think, were stalling, dragging their feet, doing everything they could to avoid true negotiations because there were a lot of things going on. The economy was slowing, and still is for the railroads. And on top of that, they had this view of the upcoming presidential election as something that may be helpful to them. It has historically been that we transfer from a Democratic administration to a Republican and vice versa after a two-term presidency. It's just about always happened. The only exception in modern history is the first Bush when he succeeded Reagan for one term. So they were really looking forward to a Republican administration, and they were very much dragging their feet. Now we had a session in June, and we've been meeting regularly, and these are big meetings. A lot of people there, a lot of industry people, and a lot of organization people. As you know, we're in a coalition with 5 other unions. And so we've been meeting for a number of sessions, and it even got to the point where they were starting to send their lower level management folks to the meetings, and which is a pretty good sign you're not going to get anywhere. You walk in the room and you see some guy 3 tiers below a decision maker sitting there, you're not going to make much progress. This last meeting, we had decision makers there, and we had side meetings that indicated that they were going to produce meaningful proposals and do substantive negotiations. And they did. We don't like a lot of what they had to say, but they did start to negotiate. And I believe that that's because they've now given up on a successful presidential run with anyone that might help them. So it's not a Republican-Democrat thing. They know the Democratic candidate is not going to be favorable to them, and the presumptive candidate on the Republican side is nobody that they're friendly with. They don't believe that that Republican nominee will do anything in their favor with respect to trade, regulation, legislation, that type of a thing. So the good news is we're starting to negotiate. When that turns into an agreement, I can't tell you, but at least we're moving in the right direction, and hopefully we'll see something sometime over the next few sessions. The second part of this question is, what about health care? Health care will look different. Our objective is to make it look as much like what we enjoy today as we can, completely different from what they're proposing. They're proposing that we pay more and get less, and a substantial difference from what we enjoy today. And our goal is to keep it as much like we enjoy today as we can. So that's a fight that's still to be fought. My guess is there will be some changes. My hope is that we can keep the changes to a minimum and that we can be well compensated for any changes that do occur. So that's where we're at on national negotiations. CSX has canceled its cooperative safety program. What is our union's position? This is something that's near and dear to my heart. I've been a safety advocate as a local chairman going back for quite some number of years through a general chairman, participating at both the local, regional, and national level in safety efforts, all the way up to the White House, RSAC, FRA, that kind of a thing. And I've got an opinion about a lot of different company programs. I'm going to stay at the higher level here and not get too deep into the weeds. I believe that there is some merit to the idea of working cooperatively with the company, any company, to help enhance a safe work environment. Having said that, I've worked with every major railroad in the country. Not a one of them is doing the right thing with respect to these cooperative programs. I've been on a number of properties assigned as a vice president and a general chairman before that, and we can show them how to do a good cooperative safety program. We have showed them how to do that, and they can't help themselves. They just won't do it. They want to manipulate, they want to turn it into something that it shouldn't be, and they oftentimes turn it into something, more often than not, turn it into something that looks nothing like when the discussions first started. So, as I say, each and every time that someone comes to me and talks about a company safety program, we already have a safety program. It's our legislative department. We have rules in place, we have procedures in place, we have roles well defined in our Constitution about how this is supposed to work. If there's a safety issue, it needs to be brought to a local meeting, given to an LR. They know how to handle it. They know how to do their business. We have an enforcement mechanism. If it can't be handled at the local level, we escalate it up. We have state directors. We have national directors. We know the phone numbers of the local FRA, PUC inspectors. We know the number of the national inspectors. We know the number of the administrator of the Federal Railroad Administration. So I tell everybody, the fallback position each and every time is that we have a safety program, Mr. Railroad. We don't need your safety program. We don't need you picking who you want to participate. We'll pick who participates. If they refuse to do this type of a... If they refuse to cooperate in a manner that we can live with, we'll do our own thing. And frankly, I think that our own thing is much more effective than anything we've seen out of the railroads. I don't know where this question came from. You know, we did see this last year, and trying to be good leaders here and respond to the wishes of our membership and all that, we looked into it, and, you know, we couldn't round up enough covered wagons, our campsites, our union members. So frankly, I'm afraid we're not going to be able to do it this year, but we're going to keep on looking, and that's kind of a lead-in a little bit to next year's region meetings. We do have the Eastern region pinned down. It's in New York City, a beautiful place, Times Square. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're still working on the Western. We were close. We thought we could get it done in time to announce before this meeting, but we didn't, but we hope to have that announcement out soon. We've got a couple of locations that we're trying to pin down. So sorry, North Dakotans, but maybe next year. Now, this is a really good question. What can we do to increase participation at these meetings by our bus members? We've already done a lot, I believe. Those of you in the bus department may have noticed that this meeting looks a lot different from meetings past. We have meaningful workshops in every time slot. A bus person can come here and start Monday morning and stay busy with real stuff all the way through Wednesday afternoon, this time at the closing of the meeting. So we've tried to introduce new content. And frankly, going around and traveling, and as I travel and try to get to learn the bus members and the bus departments a little bit better than I knew coming into this position, I heard a lot. I sit down and I talk with members at local meetings, and I hear a lot. And one of the things I asked was, you know, well, you've got some problems with how you run the meeting, the local meeting. Why don't you send people to the regional meeting and we can show them how to do that, and everybody will be trained to do a better job. And some of the things I heard in some of the locals was that, well, we don't want to send our guys off to the region meetings because we don't think they're really attending and that they're goofing off and this and that and the other. And so that was one of the driving points behind our certificate program, so that, you know, not only for recognition of your efforts in participating and your own personal satisfaction in receiving a certificate, it also permits someone who needs to go back to the local and say, here's what we did. Here's the workshops we attended, the days that we were there. And it also allows for locals and general committees and state boards to adjust bylaws in some cases where they pay for participation at these meetings, that they can be paid for reaching a certain certificate level. We'll pay you to go to the meeting, but you need to come back and show us that you actually went and that you attended the workshops and all that. So again, I think that what we've already done is a significant step forward in increasing bus participation at these meetings. And we're welcome to more feedback. If anybody out there has ideas about how we can do that. We've tried to publicize more bus information in the newspaper that goes out. We're continually updating on our website. We've got our legislative department handling bus issues every day in Washington, D.C. And so we're trying to get that word out there. We're trying to get our members more involved and paying attention to what the union does for them, and increase awareness and interest in participating in the union. So again, any feedback that you can give, don't be bashful, put it on the app, send me a letter, send an email. You all know how to get a hold of me. So we do want to work to improve and continue to improve participation in the bus department. Yes. I'll expand on that for a little bit. If you notice, another thing that we did, for those of you who have been in years past going to the region meetings, we had a lot of workshops, many in the same time slot. We've reduced that number of workshops so that the remaining ones were, we hoped, more targeted towards education focus, and also larger. As a result, they're larger, right? And fewer workshops, bigger meeting rooms. We haven't quite we don't quite have that dialed in as far as, well, how many handouts do we need? It used to be 150 handouts was more than enough. Now it's not. So we're dialing it in, but everything that was put out in all of the different workshops will be made available online, so people will be able to go to it. If they want to know what that handout was in the nuts and bolts workshop, for example, they can go on, they can click, they can get it, and we'll be able to get the good work that Anthony Petru has done in putting that together. It will be accessible to not only the people who attended the meeting, but to any member as well. So when you go back to your local and you talk this up, you can tell them they can go to the website and get what they need and actually see the same thing that you saw here at the meeting. Furloughs, happening all over the country. As I mentioned earlier, that the economy is pretty good, but not so much for the railroads at the moment. Traffic is down. Most of that's coal, oil, commodities, that kind of thing. And we've seen a little bit of an uptick in grain lately, but for the most part, we've got furloughs all over the country on every railroad that are pretty much related to the downturn in coal traffic. And that's an important issue because we've seen it spike back up now in summertime. I don't think that's got a lot of staying power. I think that's the summertime vacation rush, things like that. I hope I'm not correct, but I've talked to all of the major railroads. I've talked to some CEOs. They tell me that they don't look for coal business ever to come back to what it was before. So that's a piece of traffic that provided good jobs for our members that we're no longer going to see. And so that's something that's very important. We have some general committees with many, many members furloughed. We have locals, 50 in that one local. We know of locals with 80 or 90 people furloughed. That's a big hit on a local, and it impacts revenues, finances. It's impacted our revenue. I mentioned earlier that we reduced the amount of staff that comes to these meetings strictly because the revenue's down based on the furloughs that are going on all over the country. We hope it turns around. We're doing everything we can to support any efforts to help it turn around. But the fact of the matter is the business has changed and the climate has changed as far as the political world that has to do with the production of fossil fuel and all that. And I know I've traveled around the country. I've been in the West Virginia local union meetings, talked to the members there, and there's a bit of a hostility. They think that President Obama shut down coal. He did not shut down coal. Coal is being shut down all over the world. Some of his policies have facilitated transitioning. That's a hard thing to say because I'm a Democrat supporter and a President Obama supporter. We fight for coal. John Risch, I can't tell you how much he's in there every day fighting to preserve coal, attempting to get good, clean coal. But one of the realities of the situation is that coal is transitioning, and it's all over the world. Even China, for crying out loud, is using less coal. We can't sell it to China anymore. They've got their own coal. And so there's an industry transition here that we need to manage. And that's one of the things that I heard not long ago that I thought was kind of comical almost is here maybe 2 months ago in Kentucky, Hillary Clinton went to the state AFL-CIO and she asked for a sit down with some labor leaders. And we had two of our people though, Jared Cassidy, the guy that sang the national anthem here, he sat down along with Vice President Doyle Turner, with Hillary Clinton in a small group. We're talking about 10 people. We're not talking a room like this. And she was there to learn more face-to-face with the people who were affected by the downturn in coal. She wanted to ask questions. She wanted to know what the needs were, what she could do to help. And you know what Trump did when he went to visit the coal country? He said, "Get ready, I'm putting you back to work." He didn't have any idea. He didn't say how he was going to do that. He has no ideas. He can't manufacture a market. He can't change the world transition to a different energy source. It's just blowhard stuff. And this gets me into something I'm trying to keep down a little bit, I guess, is my feelings about Trump and what he's trying to promise to the working people. It's really exasperating to me when I see a good number of people that we represent turning and believing that Trump is speaking to them straight. He tells it like it is. You know, he doesn't tell it like it is. Trump lies. He really does. And the thing that he's not going to be good for the working people. He walks, as General President Seller said this morning, he walks away from his contracts. He'll sign a deal. If he doesn't like it, he just walks away, and it's all shell companies. He bankrupts the company, and now what do you're left there with, you made an honorable deal, and you did an honorable job, and this guy walks away from it. He doesn't pay you what you deserve. He doesn't pay his workers at his resorts in Florida. There are any number of labor actions against him because he refused to pay his workers. He thought he made a deal with them, agreed to pay so much, then he thought, that was too much, I don't want to pay him, so he just doesn't pay him. And then they have to go get a lawyer, they have to go to a labor board, they have to go through all that process. The guy is not good for the working people. Any product you see that has Trump on it, you can look at the tag. It was made in China, it was made in Mexico. He's not bringing jobs back here. Nothing that he has ever done supports his statement that he will bring jobs back to America. Not going to happen. Trump University, that's a scam. He's getting sued. It's a Hail Mary from some parents trying to get their kids an education, and what happens? They sign up with Trump University, they get an education, which, by the way, costs more money, and then more money, and then more money. People have to keep producing money, and then at the other end, they pop out. It's worthless. It's meaningless. He's getting sued by the federal government. What kind of guy is that? He's going to be our president? He's going to renege on every deal? He won't show his tax returns? Why is that? What's there to hide? Is he making too much money? Is he paying no taxes? Is he not making any money? Who knows? He won't tell us. Trump is not good for America. He's not good for working men and women, and our people need to know that they shouldn't vote for Trump. It's a vote against their own interests. If you look at, let's take railroad. Railroad Retirement Board, that's our pension, right? Federally controlled. National Mediation Board, when you get fired, that's how you get back to work. Federally controlled. I've got a list. I made a list. FELA, that's how you get compensated when you get hurt on the job. Federally, that's a Federal Employer Liability Act, that's federal. Surface Transportation Board, we heard from Dan Elliott, our former employee. That's who decides on mergers and labor protection. Guess who appoints those guys? Federal Aviation, just like FRA. Anybody in the airline industry is governed by a similar set of rules as what we're governed by on the railroad side. What happens when you get sick if you're a rail employee? You go on railroad retirement sickness benefits, federally controlled. What happens if you get furloughed? A lot of members furloughed. They receive railroad retirement unemployment benefits, federally controlled. National Mediation Board, I just mentioned that. Federal certification, Part 240, Part 242. Where does that come from? Federally controlled. We have training standards for pilots. We have, and this is not just rail. For those of you in the bus industry, if you've ever been touched by federal transit funding, FTA stuff, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, sleep apnea, interest federally on that, medical qualifications for drivers, federal interest in that. 13C protection, some of the things that guarantees your income and your employment when a transaction occurs and some money, federal money is spent at a location and then something else happens, you're protected. That comes from a regulation out of the government, the federal government. All of these things are federal. Each and every one of those touches our members each and every day. For our members to vote against their own interest because Trump tells it like it is, knowing fully well that he has an influence on each and every one of those in the event that he got elected, that would be a shame. And we're going to do everything we can to educate our members so that they know where their interests lie and they know where they need to place their vote. And it's not with Donald Trump. Any more questions? Was that it? No more questions. All right. Matt, are you in the room? Where's Matt?
No, we got the box over here.
Got a box? Yeah. All right. We've got some preliminary results over this certification program, which, by the way, we've received great feedback over, and we wanted to kind of share that with you a little bit. We've got a drawing plan and that sort of thing. So bear with us for a minute while we get up to speed here. The participation level, we had almost half of the attendees do the scanning thing. Out of those, we had 122 attain gold level. That's extraordinary. I want to give you a hand. As a matter of fact, we're so pleased with the participation that we've decided to expand the drawing. Instead of one first place, we're going to have a first, second, and third place. And so first place will be 5 comped registrations for your local in 2017. Second place will be 3 comped registrations, and third place will be 2 comped registrations. So we're going to need a volunteer. Who's a volunteer? Rich?
Rick, you handle the money, so.
Come on up. Reach in and pull one out. Okay. Prize number 3, 2 comped registrations. Roberto Alvarado, 1741. 1741 here? That's all right, you'll do. Come on up. Let's draw another one, Rich. Scott Bubalik, local 202. Is Scott here? Scott, come on up, man. You can't sit down there. We've got to get you up on the big stage. All right, Rich, one more. And this is for first place, the first prize, 5 comped registrations. It's Ronald Reesing, 1975 local chairperson. Ronald here? How about a 1975? Any 1975 members here? All right, you're all hiding out. Nobody's fessing up here. All right. All right, well, in closing, I want to say thank you to the people who participated. You can take this back to your local. You can tell them that you came here, got educated, and you have provided a benefit for them for next year, that they can send even more people to come and do the same thing. And hopefully this will be received well in the field. And we really do appreciate the level of participation that made this happen. Thank you. Okay, end of meeting. Thank you guys very much. I want to also thank General President Sellers, GS&T Rich McLeese, our General Executive Council members of the SMART General Executive Board. Thank you for being here, staying, and getting to learn and know our membership. Again, good meeting. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.